the tax planning team that helps business owners earn more and keep more.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, man. Good morning. Welcome in. Blake has been insufferable, whether it's New Orleans Saints fans, and now he's beating up on Aaron Rodgers. He cannot pull for Green Bay this weekend, so he will pull for the
best team in the NFC South.
Well, one of the people that were part of the evil empire of the NFL the last 20 years, and that would be Tom Brady.
But he's not evil anymore. Now he's a good guy, Tom.
Yeah, now, when you're with Tampa Bay, it's so funny. It's just a kind of a transient, cheesy, fun beach town, I guess.
Yeah.
That doesn't really bother anybody.
They've never been good enough to matter.
Like Boston will bother people, or New York, or Philly.
Yeah.
But Tampa, even though it's a lot of the people from there, it's, all these gumbo of people from all over the Northeast, I guess, and Midwest. But Blake's pulling for Brady and the Buccaneers because Rodgers and Green Bay have stuck it to his Dallas Cowboys a couple times. The Dez catch that was ruled not a catch. And then a few years ago, Dak Prescott and Aaron Rodgers battled it out in an epic game where both had great numbers. But Aaron made that last play where he flicked it over to the left side of the field to one of their tight ends or something.
Yep.
And
Jermaine Finley.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, so that
made an incredible toe tap catch right over Sean Lee and in front of who cares because the Dallas secondary is garbage.
Well, Sean Lee was overrated too. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Kind of what Dan Patrick says. How many of these Cowboy defensive players are overrated just because they play for the Cowboys? And you know them because the Cowboys are always playing in the 3:15 slot or the Sunday night slot. Anyway, back to and he says he's pulling for the Chiefs. Why are you pulling for the Chiefs over the Bills?
I love Andy Reid. I've loved Andy Reid. I hated that he was at Philly because I loved Andy Reid when he was at Philly. He is, you know why? Because he was always the bridesmaid and he was never the bride. And finally he got it because they never valued Andy Reid. One coach in the history of a 100-year sport has gone to 3 straight championship games for their conference division, and it's Andy Reid, and he's done it twice in 2 different conferences. So Andy Reid is undervalued and underappreciated, and he deserves as many titles as he wants.
And Philadelphia fired him.
Yeah. So shout out to the Eagles.
Are we surprised that they are where they are right now without a coach and don't know what to do with Carson Wentz?
Well, they just fired a Super Bowl winning coach. You got 1 Super Bowl in your franchise, and you gave the guy who won it 2 seasons, and then you were like, nah, we're done with you.
Is Doug Peterson, Ed Ogeron, Gene Chizik, or is he more Sean Payton with the 1 title?
He's Belichick, right? Or Saban. Bad first tenure, or not bad first tenure, but maybe doesn't get the benefit of the doubt first time, and he's going to come back stronger and better, and he's going to go win a Super Bowl with somebody else. Like Belichick with the Browns was terrible, but it was the Browns.
It wasn't
right?
as bad. Yeah, I mean, it looked like they had turned it around, and then some things got away from him.
I'm not saying Peterson's going to win.
But Peterson won a Super Bowl.
Exactly, and that tells you how chaotic Philly is, and that their ownership and everything, they don't know what they're doing, man.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get rid of him? I think
do you
Doug
think
Peterson's
that
a great coach.
Deshaun Watson will be
take a snap for Houston next year?
Yeah. Will he run out as a Texan or another team?
I think the hot take is to say he will be with Houston. Right now, it feels like all the money is that he's gone. I don't know. Things don't always play out the way you think they will in the NFL.
No.
But I'll tell
Jimmy
you this
G,
much. Let me tell you, if you're the Jets, you trade the number 2 pick and next year's first round and maybe 1 more for Deshaun Watson right now.
Easy.
Yeah. I'd trade 3 first rounds for Deshaun Watson.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, these teams draft safeties and guards and running backs. Good grief. You can find those guys in the 3rd round all day long. We'll have Steve Robertson, Hail State Insider, coming up in a minute here. We'll check in on what's going on in Starkville. We had Cole Kubelik on in the first hour SEC Network, Jackson, Birmingham. And he walked us through a little Matt Corral and Steve Sarkisian of Texas and some other things. That was a good interview. David Johnson, Rebels 247, joined us at 8:30. All this is on Apple Podcasts. Search the Out of Bounds Show. Would love for you to subscribe. Apple Podcasts, search the Out of Bounds Show if you miss any of the show. And we tweet out all sorts of things, too, with that deal. You can watch the show right now on YouTube, the webcast on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We welcome in Steve Robertson on the Beta Andy Gator guest line. Hail State Insider, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Steve, what is the latest on defensive linemen who opted out for Mississippi State last year? What is the latest on Nathan Pickering for MSU?
Well, Nathan is in class at Mississippi State right now. He is enrolled and in classes and, expected to take part in the spring. That was one of those things, too, that everybody kind of wondered about when guys opt out, kind of how that has happened. But, the bottom line is the NCAA protocol requires that schools keep these guys on scholarship. The opt-out was supposed to be a risk-free thing. And so, he's not in the portal or anything like that. So he's in class, and we look forward, to him having a big year this year at Mississippi State. Now,
if things go as planned, do you expect him to be a starter on the defensive line?
Well, last year Jaden Crumedy beat him out. Nathan was running second team. And a lot of that, too, is, Nathan showed up a little bit heavy, I guess, for the position, needed to get a little bit stronger. But yeah, he's a difference maker. I think that he's a guy that'll obviously, play a lot in the rotation. And, I think they feel really good about that defensive tackle spot moving forward. Cam Young has proven to be, probably a little bit of an overachiever at this point. But, State signed him out of Franklin County. Wasn't a lot of, highly coveted schools kind of looking at him, but, he's done well. After Nathan Pickering went out, I thought Cam Young played well, but I think they feel really good about the defensive tackle spot moving forward, and Pickering will be a big part of that.
Edge rushers, what does that look like going into the spring?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what DeMonte Russell does. He's a guy that, kind of made some headlines in the post-Armed Forces Bowl festivities, but, I think he's a guy that could, potentially be, a difference maker at edge rusher. He didn't play last year, and there was a lot of, concern about that. But people forget that he and J.P. Purvis were in a pretty serious car accident that, nearly killed somebody, and so, both those guys are still kind of working their way back into football shape. Purvis played a little bit this year, but DeMonte Russell was medically unavailable. But, we're told he should be full go this year.
All right. With Errol Thompson going to the NFL, walk our listeners through the linebackers. For Zach Arnett.
The newcomer that everybody needs to be mindful of is Deshaun Page. He's a guy out of East Mississippi Community College that flipped from Texas Tech to Mississippi State. Probably see him, probably earn some accolades pretty early on from the coaching staff. He's a guy that's already enrolled in school and be a full participant, in spring football activities. And so he's the guy that I think people are excited about. Of course, what Aaron Brule can do. Nathaniel Watson, kind of a jack of all trades, bounced around out there. And then, in that ball game against Missouri, he was leading tackler. And so I think they feel good about where they are at linebacker. But, of course, they addressed some depth concerns in this class, went out and signed 4 linebackers. And so there'll be some new names at the position, but should be a strong unit.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com on the Out of Bounds Show. All right, Fred Peters is coming back. What are your expectations for him in 2021, safety?
Well, I think they'll be careful with him in the spring. He did have the season-ending, surgery post-Texas A&M, and so he's well on his way back to recovery, but there's no need to push him in the spring. He's a guy that's your nickel safety and was really playing well before he got hurt. And so if he makes a full recovery, and there's no reason to think that he won't, he's a guy that should probably be, back in the starting lineup this year. And, that safety group is awfully interesting. Mississippi State was down 6 safeties this year. That's the thing everybody looks at. And you've got some guys out there that are really kind of career special teams guys trying to defend over the top against the most prolific offensive conference in college football. And there were some issues But when you start thinking about getting guys like Fred Peters back and Dylan Lawrence back, and then Jannari Dean was a guy that was turning heads in fall camp and ended up having a torn meniscus and had surgery. So you start getting some guys healthy, and all of a sudden that position shows some real potential.
Okay, Jannari Dean, they expect him to come back. They were excited. You were too about his potential. Is he a safety, or is he going to grow into a linebacker, Steve?
Well, I think he's a safety for now, and then we'll kind of monitor that that growth potential here in the next couple of years. I don't know that he has the frame to play linebacker unless it's more like the Aaron Brule type, where that they get out there and kind of move him around a little bit. But Jannari Dean was a guy that a lot of people expected to get some playing time last year as a two-deeper, and then he's unavailable. And it's easy to forget about that sort of stuff. People look and they hear all the media reports about taking 49 scholarship players, to Georgia. As it stands right now, Mississippi State's got 78 scholarship players, are projected to have 78 scholarship players when you add the 26 signees in. So, a lot of these concerns about, the roster certainly are warranted, but at the same time, too, it's not as emergent as some other people would suggest that it is. I mean, you've got some guys that were unavailable last year that will be available this year, and then you went out and recruited pretty well in the junior college ranks this year. And so I think most people are kind of cautiously optimistic moving forward.
If you had to handicap Scott Lashley coming back, he's from West Point, signed with Alabama, got hurt before the season-ending injury, I think, in August. He has said he's coming back. I'm reading your article here on genespage.com. If you had to handicap him starting, give me the odds.
Yeah, it's tough to say. He was a guy last year in workouts. It was kind of up and down a little bit, and then he got injured. But, with State losing both Darian Parker and Greg Island to the NFL draft, I mean, there's an opportunity right there, to start. He has the potential to do it. And I think one of the things with him, too, I think he kind of got comfortable being a two-deep guy rather than being a starter. And so look for them to really push him, really, really push him this year, because this is the last rodeo for him. And, we signed out of West Point. He's a four-star guy. A lot of people were excited about him. He got over to Alabama, didn't play a whole lot, kind of a cautionary tale. But, yeah, he's a guy that certainly should be a two-deeper at guard. I don't think he plays at tackle, but, we'll see how things go in the spring. And I think that's one of the benefits, too. You look at Mason Miller's group. I mean, they got a ton of people coming back. And then you went out and signed 5 guys here. Now, listen, I was told last week that Albert Reese, in one of his first workouts at Mississippi State, bench pressed 225 pounds nearly 20 times. And so that's a guy that's showing up on campus with some strength that perhaps some of your returning guys didn't have.
Okay, Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. What about, I think this Javonte Payton thing is a bigger deal than some people think. I think the kid can play, and 9 months under Leach with Will Rogers, all that kind of stuff. Out of the gate, he went for 122 against LSU, and then he was banged up for most of the year. How do you see this shaking out for Javonte Payton, wide receiver at MSU?
Yeah, I think it's big too. I mean, that's the thing too, is I don't understand why Joe and those guys, Michael Johnson, didn't get him more on the field, back in 2019. But he showed some real flashes and the ability to elevate and go make a tough catch. And you mentioned the LSU game, and then he gets hurt against Arkansas, and he isn't 100% the rest of the year, and finally gets back into decent playing shape and gets absolutely crushed against Ole Miss. And, then he's out for the rest of the regular season, comes back and plays little special teams. But, he hadn't been right, since that Arkansas game. So, you get him back, and this is a guy, obviously, that knows the scheme a little bit and has been in the program. So I think getting him back is almost like going out and getting a grad transfer of sorts. We talk about that. Oh, we need a difference maker at wide receiver. Well, I think Javonte Payton's potential is still relatively untapped, and if he can be healthy this year, I think he's a guy that's got a chance to really, really contribute.
Yeah, that as far as depth, that could be huge for MSU with Jaden Walley, Tulu, some of those other guys. I guess Austin Williams and Malik, and then Javonte Payton, right? Oh, Mekhi Polk. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, one of the guys that's kind of lost in the discussion is Caleb Ducking. I mean, he was a guy that was not really highly recruited, but, he's a 6'5" guy around 200 pounds and then runs a legitimate, high 4.4, low 4.5 40. And he was academical and eligible this year, but you get that guy back too. That's another big-bodied receiver out there. I'm not saying that he's going to be the featured guy in the offense, but when you start looking at depth and the fact that you added 5 receivers in this class, you signed 4 in the last class, and that wide receiver room desperately needed an overhaul, and it's gotten one. Now it's time to get those guys on the field and have them play up to their potential. But the way you fix the deficiencies of town is you throw numbers at it. And that's exactly what Mike Leach has done since he's been here. I mean, in less than 14 months, he signed 9 wide receivers, and that's kind of unheard of in these parts.
Yeah, that group, August 5th, all those guys that you and I just named, that's got to be the most potential in that group in years, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And you look at a guy like Austin Williams, they always call him kind of steady Eddie. I mean, he's a possession guy, and he makes a contested catch. He's not a guy that's going to be running wide open in the secondary very often. There's some schematic things you can do to kind of get him open, but he kind of is what he is. But, he's a guy I thought was invaluable to Mississippi State last year. Great third down guy, and not to mention that guy on first down to go out there and run the seven-yard curl in the face of a Mike linebacker and then get blasted and hang on to the football, and all of a sudden you're in second and short. So, he's a good piece to this too. But, I like the fact they've made a commitment numbers-wise, but there are some interesting pieces. It's just, can Mekhi Polk get up to speed? I mean, he's already been announced as a new student at Mississippi State, so he's taking part in football workouts, and we just need that one-time transfer rule to come through to ensure that he's eligible this year.
How many guys will they have enroll this month?
Yeah, I think it's already done now. I mean, I guess, Carson Williams hadn't been announced, but he's an offensive lineman, not a Gulf Coast Community College, but I'm told that's just a matter of paperwork and kind of getting his file looked at. And you got a handful of other guys. I guess it's 7, 8 guys. I guess they're early enrollment guys now. And so I remember, and Bo, I know you're old enough to remember this too, when nobody enrolled in January, outside of junior college guys. And you got some high school guys that are doing it. Daniel Greek has done it. And so now that's kind of become the goal. I remember when, you hope to have everybody here for the first session of summer school, and now it's become commonplace to get some of these guys on campus for spring practice. And it's good for them to get ahead academically, but it's good for the football program to allow them that extra practice time to kind of prepare for the season.
Interesting. Steve Robertson, genespage.com. They've got all kinds of stuff up on football right now. It's never ending, obviously, with football, 12 months a year, every week. And now with the transfer portal stuff that Steve has mentioned, I still think they're hunting another guy or two. We'll see how that shakes out. Steve Robertson on the Abita Andy Gator guest line, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Steve, let's switch gears. Big win on Saturday. It wasn't pretty. They got to figure things out late in the game because they seemed to really, really look sloppy late. But Tolu Smith he had already played well at times. Didn't you think that was his coming out party, the Western Kentucky transfer, as far as what he was able to do against Florida on Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, he's not just, a trash guy around the rim. He's a guy you can actually run some offense through. And that's what amazed me about him is, he'd field a double team and then, was able to kind of under duress, get the ball out to somebody else. And then when the ball came back in, he had such good footwork, kind of getting loose and getting to the rim. And, he's such a wide-bodied, strong guy on the boards. I mean, you think about what Abdul can do, and then you add Tolu Smith to the mix. It's a real matchup for teams once you get into the half court because everybody wants to kind of get out and run with 3 and 4 guards. Well, if State plays good transition defense and forces you to play half-court offense, they're going to have the advantage around the rim, and I think that's what Tolu Smith brings to the table. And you're right about, closing out games, and a lot of that boils down to guard play. You got to be able to beat press. You got to be able to make free throws, and both of those have been somewhat elusive for Mississippi State. But, you get the win, you kind of move forward, and I think everybody feels like, Buzz Williams has kind of Ben Howland's number. Ben's kind of had Michael White's number.
Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock in the Hump. You would think that there's an enormous amount of pressure on Kermit Davis Jr., and I'm sure there is. But with Ole Miss not playing as well as they thought they would, and Mississippi State, Jekyll and Hyde, in my opinion. I agree with you on the guard play late. I don't understand why. I would think Molinar and Smith could handle it, but whatever. Boy, is this a big one at the – I know the two fan bases aren't that gung-ho about it, but when they play, everybody seems to lock in for a couple hours. How big is this game tomorrow night for Howland?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really big for both programs. And, this is a chance, too. State dropped a couple of games they probably shouldn't have. But I think most people would agree State's probably playing above expectations. Ole Miss probably playing a little bit beneath expectations. So, this could kind of be a turnaround for somebody. If State loses this ball game, you're going to have a largely apathetic fan base get extremely apathetic. And the Ole Miss folks on the other side thinking, okay, well, yes, so we've been in some games and, probably should have beat Georgia. And now here we are, got a chance to go get a big road win in the SEC. And so, yeah, I expect both teams to bring their best efforts. I don't think there's anybody going through the motions when State and Ole Miss get together in anything.
No. All right. College baseball is what? Month away?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, we're hoping to get the schedule tomorrow. I was told late last week that it was pretty much done. They were just kind of waiting on a release, and I think there was one more contract they were waiting for. Today being a holiday for the school, I don't expect a release today, but I think it could come tomorrow. But, yeah, I mean, State number 7, I guess Ole Miss number 6. I mean, and how cool is it, even with Southern Miss, I mean, in our state, if you love baseball, you're going to love college baseball because, we're going to have 3 teams within this state that are competing for big things each and every year. And that's one thing that I love is watching, college baseball. And every game matters. It's not one of these situations where, you go out there and these SEC weekends are insignificant. I mean, every single one of these games matter. And because, we're playing to host and we're playing to potentially be super regional host and being a top 8 national seed. And so it's a great time to be a college baseball fan in the state of Mississippi for sure.
I've got about a minute. Give me one guy that has to have a monster year for Mississippi State. It can be a pitcher or a guy in the field. Give me one guy that has to have a monster year for MSU baseball.
I think it's Eric Sarantola, and he's the Sunday guy, so you feel great about Christian McLeod on Friday night. You feel really good about Will Bednar. He's a real competitor. But if State's going to pull off some sweeps and State's going to be able to win those rubber games, I mean, Eric Sarantola, his control issues have to kind of be, better than they have been throughout his career. And everybody tells me he has the best right-handed breaking ball, spin rate-wise, in all of college baseball. And so he's got the potential. It's just a matter of being able to land that breaking ball for a strike. But if Sarantola, can be a winning pitcher this year, I think Mississippi State has a chance to do some huge things.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com. They'll get you caught up on all things Mississippi State sports. Thanks, Steve.
Take care.
Steve Robertson on the Abita Andy Gator. Talking about good beer. Raising Abita to Drew Brees' career late this afternoon while you light up the grill and put something good on it. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Speaking of good, charbroiled oysters at Drago's Seafood Restaurant and Oyster Bar. Right there on County Line Road, right across the street. Edwin Watts Golf Shop. Carrie and the team will keep you in the mix with your golf game. Clubs, balls, you name it. Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road across from the Hilton Jackson. And the show is also presented by Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. For all your collision repair, it's right behind Acura of Jackson. Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. That's Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. And the show is powered by Superior Foundation. For all your foundation needs and repairs, Superior Foundation.